Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square, and welcome to the weekly assignment where executive producer Sam Osterhout and I talk to you about what's coming up on Lincoln Square this week, the latest headlines, and what we can all do to fight back against authoritarianism. Hey, Sam, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Susan?
Good. I know you were out and about in the nation's capital last week, so we didn't see as much of each other.
Yeah, I know. We talked a lot though. And yeah, DC was a strange place. It was a little bit dark. Like the attitude, the tone, the mood is just, and it obviously it could have just been me.
No.
But the people I spoke with were feeling pretty heavy, and you see Trump's name on the Kennedy Center every time you drive over the bridge, and it was just weird. It was a weird spot.
Yeah, there's a heaviness there, even more so, I feel, than during his first term when I went to DC. And
Yeah.
because the Trumpiness is much more present. I mean, he's on the Department of Labor building. He's on all sorts of things. His signature will be on our money soon. Lucky us. So
yeah,
you really can't get away from him. And when I was there over the summer, that was when it was kind of the height of the National Guard being dispatched, and they were just kind of hanging out on the National Mall, not really doing much. But I understand that there's still a presence.
there is. The motorcade went past. I was there the morning. I was in the mall there the morning of when he went for 13 minutes or so to the Supreme Court, and apparently got bored and left. And I saw the motorcade. What's that?
No TV cameras inside, so he got bored.
Or TVs.
Right.
Which also I know delights him. But yeah, I wanted to give the motorcade a nice salute, but there were there were armed men all up and down the lane, and it was a quick pass. It wasn't like a parade or anything, but you just feel a little bit intimidated.
Yeah. And you couldn't help but notice that Trump was out of the public eye for many days last week, and he did not go to Mar-a-Lago. He didn't leave Washington, and usually you see him out and about. And so that led to a lot of speculation. And then yesterday morning, Easter morning, the president had a message for all of us, probably after angrily reading all of the speculation that something might have happened, and all of the tweets with people just praying that something had happened to him.
Yeah. Jake Tapper read his Easter tweet or truth. Should we roll that?
Yeah, because and if you have children watching, they may not want to because there's some coarse language.
Yeah.
He has just threatened Iran in extraordinary graphic terms, giving the Iranian regime just over a day to either make a deal, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or face hell. If your children are watching, be warned, the president did not use polite language. Quote, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. We should note that destroying civilian power infrastructure is generally considered to constitute a war crime under international law, though the president could argue that the infrastructure has dual use and also is utilized by Iran's military. Let's get right to...
That's our president.
Yeah. Well, I frequently criticize the media, and we had a special about independent media and critiquing the corporate media over the weekend, which was really fun to do. But I've got to give Jake Tapper credit, who we have had on Lincoln Square before, to some mixed reviews. But I felt like he handled that very well. He noted that this was very likely a war crime. He did not back away from what the president said and try and whitewash it, which is the instinct of a lot of media. And I mean, this is what our president is threatening. And you and I have talked about this before, Sam, but it really seems like Trump feels like he is backed into a corner. Iran is not going along with his off ramps. And when bullies feel like they have no place to go, they get really angry.
It's transparent. It is a transparent sort of call for help. And, it is the move of someone with no moves left. You're right. He's in a corner. And I think it's also worth just remembering that he launched this war without a clear objective.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no clear objective, you have no way of understanding or evaluating whether or not you've won. Right. So, if we can do a sort of creative mind experiment where you imagine what does it actually look like to win, it's almost impossible to understand. Become friends with a new regime in Iran. What would that take?
Mm-hmm.
Normalize. I don't know. There's nothing. From Iran's standpoint, though, winning kind of looks like what they're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. They control the Strait of Hormuz, which they did not do before this conflict. They have won economically because we've lifted sanctions off of them because Trump is so desperate to keep the price of gas down. Mm-hmm. So they are quite literally profiting off of this war, which is just an incredible thought. Such a deal maker this president is.
I mean, there's a non-zero chance that they'll hold on to the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely and also be able to refinance their entire system based on the toll booth of ships going through, right? This is, he handed them this sort of victory that, the people of Iran in the streets who were risking their lives and giving up their lives to protest their own government now have no power.
Right.
So he's removed really one pathway towards real revolution in Iran.
Right. And threatening an entire country with bombing them to the Stone Age. I mean, as we've talked about, because I know you have friends and family who are in Iran and a lot of expats are here, certainly a lot of people wanted to see regime change, but nobody wants to see the entire country blown to bits by a madman, obviously.
No. And, they're the monarchists and, the people who are behind Pahlavi are, I saw a poll this weekend that it's actually a pretty small percentage of the diaspora Iranians who are behind a king. But they have a really well-financed and well-funded and shiny PR system on Instagram and elsewhere that makes it really feel like they're, outnumbering everyone else. But the fact is, people want a free Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump made that dramatically less likely.
Right. I wanted to talk real quick before we bring on our guest, and I'm excited to talk with her about some of the larger dynamics here. We know that we went to war because, in part, Netanyahu obviously has been itching for this war for decades. Yeah. But I feel like we also need to acknowledge that things are more complicated. Right now, Netanyahu seems like he has gotten a lot out of this deal. He's been free to go bomb Lebanon. Settlers have been committing violence in the West Bank while all eyes are elsewhere. He has a destabilized Iran, and he seems to be sitting pretty. But you have MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the UAE. These are folks who really would like Trump to finish the job in Iran, because the biggest dynamic in the Middle East has always been Sunni versus Shia. Mm-hmm. And they are on the other side of Iran. You've got, the Shias that are in power in most of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, UAE. They want to weaken Iran. That is their goal. And so they don't want Trump to withdraw, even though Trump's instinct is, this isn't going well. My poll numbers suck. Gas prices are up. I'd like to go. But the New York Times and Talking Points memo they've both done some really good reporting that he is really being pressured by these folks. And let's not forget, Donald Trump's family is in business with MBS. Even when Donald Trump was out of power, MBS handed his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, $2 billion. These are people who really seem to like each other and what they're about. And so at this point, I think that is more of a factor than Netanyahu. And some of the messaging that you're seeing from Joe Kent, Trump's counterterrorism czar who stepped down, he's been trying to blame this all in Israel. Some of the progressive Democratic candidates, like Abdul El-Sayed, who's running for Senate in Michigan, we had him on the show last year. He's saying blame AIPAC, blame an AIPAC politician for your gas prices. It's a little more complicated than that. There are a lot of people we can blame for this. And personally, I think the number one person we want to blame is Trump.
Well, absolutely. And I think it bears repeating. Look, he's given the Democrats so much campaign fodder over the past 10 years, let's say, but particularly over the past 10 days when he said, look, we can't do childcare. We can't do healthcare. We have wars.
Let the states take care of Medicare. That's a new one.
Let the states. Right. So I think it also bears repeating that when these stories about AIPAC and about MBS and about Bibi, when they all come out, you have to remember he's working on their behalf and not on your behalf. And it's not like he's building highways for them, right? He's pouring money in and human and American lives into a war that does literally nothing for us.
Absolutely.
That's where we are.
Right. And as we've talked about before, this will definitely be a factor in the midterm elections. It's already playing out in a lot of the primaries that we're seeing. So why don't we go ahead? Yeah, why don't we go ahead and bring on our guest, Tori Gavito of Way to Win. And that is an organization that describes itself. It's a donor collaborative that invests in data-driven strategies to fund new media and grassroots efforts to win long-term political change. But Tori, I know you're in Texas right now. You also were the executive director of the Texas Future Project. So really excited to have you here and to tell us especially what's going on in Texas.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I was listening to a little bit of your conversation, and I am reminded that Texas, just by its sheer size, has veterans, folks in the military. We are so impacted by the choices of this particular president in this war. I was struck really personally on Friday. I don't know. I don't even know why. When we lost that helicopter and we were looking for the troop that was still missing, I really was personally affected by it. I thought, this is really serious stakes, y'all, from like an individual level and a macro level. And I think that we are feeling those stakes sort of bear change in the state of Texas. So, Texas is a complicated state. I think Way to Win has believed in a Southern theory of change for a couple of reasons. One is the donors that work in our donor collaborative. It's just a fancy word for a home for donors who want to pool their resources together to make change. We're doing what the right has done for years, which is pooling resources to win elections without compromising our values. And there's two sides to an equation when you're talking about an election. One is you want to lift up your candidates, lift up a Democrat. The other is you want to drag your opponents, right? And in this particular instance, I think dragging our opponents means more than just dragging a couple of Republicans for the harms that they're creating every day. I think it means stealing major strongholds from the Republican Party to make them think a little bit about how far and extreme they've gone. So there was a time when Way to Win first started that places like Arizona and Georgia were thought to be just pies in the sky. It's like, no, actually the numbers are there. If you look at it, there are paths to victory. And I think folks like Warnock have shown us how to win in these southern places, Senator Warnock. And we see that kind of model coming together with James Tallarico, a southern man who is, steeped in values. There's there is strength in standing in your values and not just capitulating to whatever the wind is telling you is what's popular in the moment, you know? And I think that James Tallarico, the candidate for Senate, is showing that. There's like a strange ability he has to talk to the left and talk to maybe some millennial maha moms that just are just looking for a little bit of help here with their kids. You know, there's just like this strange wind in the air. And so, whereas my job previously was to build steadily through the mega metros, you've got places like Harris County that overlay Houston, Dallas County and Dallas, where there are millions and millions of voters that are sitting on the sidelines. We were steadily registering them to vote. This is one of those moments where instead of the steady increase, we should just go whole hog on a giant set of persuasion campaigns behind Tallarico and see how far we get, because the other side is broken right now. They've got nothing to offer Texans.
That's really interesting. I know that there was just a Republican memo that dropped that showed that Ken Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, is actually up on the incumbent Senator John Cornyn in that runoff. Talk to us about that and how that might change the contours of this race if Paxton does pull it out.
Well, let's just remember the last time a Texan came really close to winning statewide, and it was Beto O'Rourke in the Senate campaign in 2018. And he came within 2 points of defeating Ted Cruz. And part of it is because Beto worked his ass off. And I mean it literally, like the dude campaigns. But the other reason he got very close is because nobody really likes Ted Cruz. And so we're looking at that kind of model here, watching what's happened on the Republican side in Texas. No one really likes Cornyn or Paxton, but people really are concerned about Paxton. Whereas Cornyn, no one likes him because I don't think anyone can point to anything he really stands for or does. At least he's like an adult in the room. Whereas Paxton is, you know, cheating on his everything, cheating on his wife, cheating in business, all the things, right? Like he's an indicted attorney general. How that works, I don't know. Watch out, world. He may be on a short list for taking Pam Bondi's job. However, the fact that it's not a real good human means that there's some opportunity to see some, you know, Republican defectors or Republican stay homers, you know, like they're just not they don't want to vote for a super bad guy. So it changes the face they've elected for the Republicans, as the Democrats have a really awesome standard bearer. The other thing that I've been noticing about the Cornyn and Paxton fight is Paxton is so messy, both politically, but also internally. He cannot manage a disciplined campaign. Texas is very big. You have to campaign in over 21 media markets at once and manage that budget. And Paxton just doesn't really get to do it. So in any case, it puts the Democrats in a unique advantage for the state in this particular election.
Yeah, Paxton is the worst. He is so bad. And like, I don't know how else to say it, but he is so damaged. And I hadn't heard that he was up against Cornyn at this moment, but is that a mirage or what's happening there? I
don't think it's a mirage, because Paxton, while he's terrible, is also a MAGA movement darling. And so people know that he'll carry water for that movement. And that's more important necessarily than, you know, a human's values or track record. And so for a particular kind of person in a Republican primary, remember, they're still fighting for the Republican primary, which is the base of the base of the base, right? Who turns out for these runoffs? But on the other hand, I mean, Cornyn is raising money hand over fist. He is a disciplined campaigner. He's got a ton of money up all over the media markets. Whenever I turn on TV, I see a Cornyn ad, and I can't say what that means about his digital targeting because I'm not a Republican primary voter. However, he's always up on TV. I guess that just shows the power of how much money he has. And so if for whatever reason Cornyn squeaks by, it's going to be because the size of his campaign purse and the discipline he brought to that campaign. However, I will say he's going to need to keep it coming, right? So Tallarico is a real opponent. And Texas Republicans, particularly on the statewide, have acted for a long time like they don't have real opponents. They're not used to having to really amass statewide campaigns. They're going to spend a lot of money in a cycle where they have a lot of seats to defend, particularly in the House. And so, I say bring it on.
This primary is going to be wildly expensive on the Republican side. But audience member says, it's expensive, but is Tallarico going to have enough money to compete across the state, especially considering the GOP budget?
I mean, Tallarico, we'll see, right? We just had a reporting deadline in the first quarter of the year. Tallarico raised a lot of money in the primary, and when he was up against Jasmine Crockett in the Democratic primary, and he outraised Crockett. A lot of conversation online about where that money came from. I can tell you, having read some of the early reports, the strength in Tallarico's fundraising numbers is the grassroots donor. So another thing that folks need to understand about Texas, I mentioned the big marketplace a couple of times, is we've got a lot of Democrats in this state. It may be a red-hued state. It may be a state where Republicans still have sort of a voter registration advantage. However, this is a giant marketplace with millions of Democrats who are willing to write the $5 check once a month, every month for the entire campaign. And it's a lot of them. And so Tallarico's definitely inspired that class, raising that money. He's also managed to court some major interests across the country. So he's not reliant exclusively on the grassroots donor. I think there are mid-sized donors who really want to see a balance of power equal out in the Senate. I can tell you that, we're all watching our republic slip away. I mean, we're all watching really a shocking downward spiral in the trajectory of America as a global superpower that has the kind of the moral fortitude to lead the world. That's not where we're at on Easter Sunday. Are you kidding me? We're all still sort of reeling by this Easter Sunday post. It is shocking. All of my Republican in-laws would be rolling in their graves right now. This is just so shocking and antithetical to any kind of straight-laced kind of point of view that like a Reagan Republican would have wanted to portray to the world. And so folks know that to rebalance power means to actually win some things. We got to win North Carolina. We got to win Maine. We got to think about like these new places that are emerging. Texas is among them. And I do hear folks say things like, oh, well, we've tried before. The amount of time, look, y'all, I have been a Texas Democrat for a very long time. And so I've heard the Lucy and the football analogy more than anyone else probably on this call. And I can tell you, it's always been cumulative. Like every race from Wendy Davis to Beto O'Rourke to maybe even Colin Allred, but I think that the national wind had a lot to do with why his kind of went back a little bit. But like we've been registering more voters every single cycle. We've been taking a different and new like big urban county. Started in Houston, moved to Fort Bend. It started in Dallas, it moved to Tarrant County. We just picked up that Tarrant County special election in Taylor River. So there have been gains along the way that have changed the face of Texas. And I have never seen the stars align like they are right now with the fighting with Cornyn and Paxton, with the once in a generation persuasive candidate like Tallarico, with the national wins in our sales. That's a big one. So it's a year to take it seriously.
After the primary last month, Donald Trump went on social media and said, I'm going to endorse a candidate between Paxton and Cornyn. I want the other guy to drop out. And then he never did, and the deadline passed. And so you still have this really intense runoff election. What do you think happened there? Because certainly if Donald Trump had made his choice, that would have been decisive, you would think, in a runoff for Republicans.
I think it would have been decisive because there are a lot of diehard Trump supporters in Texas.
Mhm.
There just are. I mean, I don't have to like travel too far in my neighborhood and I see homemade yard signs for Trump. So I don't think there was enough attention. I don't think Trump is paying close enough attention, if I'm being honest. Like if you look at the timeline between when Trump was starting to talk about the primary in Texas to the deadline, the filing deadline to withdraw, even like I think even as of last week, before the Easter holiday, there was still Paxton was still talking about dropping off maybe, but only if the senators voted for the SAVE Act or something. And there's been a lot of machinations, but within that timeline, Trump and Hegseth decided to start a war that no one asked for in Iran, and that did not get cleaned up as quickly as his overnight play in Venezuela, for example. And so they're just bigger fish to fry for Trump right now and problems that he's created for himself. And this problem in Texas of having the likelihood that the worst of both candidates is going to get through is, again, a problem Republicans have made for themselves.
What are some other opportunities that Democrats have in the South for the midterms? Because I know you're keeping your eye on much more than just Texas.
Oh yeah. I mean, I follow Southern politics because I just am a believer in history that big national change actually comes when there is Southern breakthroughs. And so, when you think about the civil rights era or the voting rights era or, Great Society and the New Deal, a lot of that came out of strands of movement building and electoral shift in the South. And so, boy, do we need some of that right now. We need a little Southern religion for this country right now to kind of change and reset the balance of power. And so I'm looking at Mississippi. I know folks are looking at Louisiana. I think Mississippi is a really fascinating place where there have been Democrats running statewide now for a few cycles that are learning more and more. I think the big lesson, though, for Way to Win and anyone who cares about sort of this fusion politics, you can't win in a Southern place like Mississippi or Texas or Georgia or North Carolina without a fusion politic. You need Black voters, white voters, Latino voters, Asian voters. Like one of the reasons why the South is popping is because there is a lot of demographic change. But you need all those strands to come together and vote together. And for a very long time, Democrats have said, well, here's my Black program. Here's my Latino program. Here's my Asian program. It's actually not persuasive, and people see it coming a mile away as pandering. So what we do is we focus on like persuasive organizing, digital, online, with the creators to really show what it looks like to all stand together around a question of who is fighting for you to make material change. This is about economics more than it is about racial justice. And Democrats need to sing that from the rooftops. And if they do, they're going to find some of those old school era New Deal coalitions coming together.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, really. And we, in the chat, people are talking about Doug Jones, obviously, and there are, the Democrats are not super popular, but there are Democrats who are starting to lead the charge for the old school Democrats. I feel like there's that change that's happening. The Tallaricos are giving a new face to the whole party.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my dad is one of those Latinos on the border who's grumpy with Democrats. I grew up a Democrat because my father taught me we're Democrats. And he told me, it's pretty recently, he's like, if I could give up on the Dallas Cowboys, I can give up on the Democrats. And the reason he says that is because he just no longer believes that they're going to win, or even if they do win, that they'll fight for him when they are in charge. And that's a takeaway that people really need to listen to. Like, it's not enough to have, I love Doug Jones. Way to Win supported that special election back in, 2017? This was pre our launch.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons he won is because he was clear about who he was and who he was fighting for, and that he'll continue to do that. Tallarico's doing the same now. If you fast forward, almost 10 years later, that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for people we can believe in.
Well, Tori, tell us the best way that people can find what Way to Win is doing right now.
Our home is on Blue Sky. I believe in that whole, what is the joke? When a Nazi buys a bar, it's no longer my bar. So we're over on Blue Sky. You can find us at Way to Win. And my name is Tori with a Y. And you can also find me on Blue Sky.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming. It was great to speak with you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Tori.
Great. So many elections for us to watch. And it's great that we're able to talk with people all over the country about the work that they're doing, because it really does take everybody. I mean, this is such a critical election.
It is. And, as we wake up on Monday morning and Trump has said, everything that he said, and we're all kind of sitting on the edge of our seats waiting to see if what happens tomorrow or Wednesday, whenever he, or 5 days from now, whenever he's committed to, wreaking havoc on the civilian population of another country. It's good to hear from people like Tori, because you remember that we have power.
Mm-hmm.
We are to some degree in the driver's seat right now.
Yeah. And we saw that last weekend with the No Kings protest too.
Yes.
So, which is just always so good for your soul to talk to and see other people who are fighting along with you, and to see them across the country, especially in those small towns where it really does take some bravery to show up when literally your entire block, your neighborhood voted the other way.
I come from a small town and in the Midwest, and, seeing my mom send pictures of her protesting, I still get a little like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? It's bravery. You really have to do it.
Yeah. Well, coming up this week on Lincoln Square, we have another really great week for you. And I know we say that every week, but I'm going to tell you why. Coming up this afternoon, we will have Simon Rosenberg and Stuart Stevens for their monthly chat. So they will have no shortage of things to talk about, of course.
And coincidentally, while we've been on air, this go at 12 p.m. Mm-hmm. It will go at 1 p.m. because Stuart, I believe, has an MSNBC hit. That
everybody wants to talk to Stuart.
Stuart's on everybody's list, but we've got him, so we're the lucky ones here. But so this says 12 p.m. Look for it at 1 p.m.
Great. And tomorrow morning at 10 Eastern, I will be talking again with Epstein survivor Jess Michaels, who is just a tremendous human being. We'll be talking about Pam Bondi getting fired. Of course, she was sitting there in that House hearing when Pam Bondi refused to acknowledge the survivors. So when I heard the news, she was the first person I really wanted to talk to about this. So that will be a really important conversation tomorrow.
Yeah, you guys are so good. And it's just one of those things that, we all talk about how, like, the memes are all, this war is about covering up Epstein and all this kind of thing. But you forget that the Epstein files are that's a real human story.
Yeah.
And we need to continue talking about it, because it's not just a file folder, it's human lives that have been affected by this.
Right. And here in the US, we have not had any justice for the survivors. There are some wonderful things that are happening across the pond, and we are seeing some accountability in other countries in Europe. But here in the US, what we have heard is, from Todd Blanche, who is now the acting attorney general, is the Epstein saga is over. We followed the law, which they did not. There are still about 3 million documents that we've never seen. And of course, most of the names that they blacked out were of people who were alleged perpetrators, not the survivors. So didn't follow the letter of the law at all. And until there's justice for survivors, this story will never be over, and we will never stop talking about it here in Lincoln Square.
No.
We also have a couple really great journalists who will be on this week. Michael Joseph Stern is one of those go-to voices on the Supreme Court. He writes for Slate, and his days are very busy with all the decisions that are starting to come down. So looking forward to speaking with him for First Draft. And also V Spear was supposed to be on with us. They do Under the Desk News. You probably have seen them on TikTok and Instagram and also Substack. They had to reschedule with us, but we're really looking forward to having them on as well. That will be a bonus edition of First Draft. And on the Frank Faguzzi show this week, we have civil rights attorney Maya Wiley. So that will be a great conversation too.
Actually, we have a slight change on that too. So much cooking over here, guys. I don't know what to tell you, but if anyone, Maxine out there, and I email back and forth, and she's like, "What happened to this show?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Maxine. A lot of moving parts here." But the Frank Faguzzi show on Wednesday will be live with Scott McFarlane.
Who left CBS News, is now on Substack, and does some, also works for Midas Touch as well. So great to have his perspective on everything. And of course, Frank, because he was on MSNBC and NBC News for years. So it's what has been a tremendous loss for the mainstream media has really been our gain here in independent media.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Maya Wiley interview will run either this week or next week, but look for that one too. Frank is such a good talent.
Yeah, we're so glad to have his show on and to have him be part of Lincoln Square. So stay tuned for a lot more Frank.
Yeah.
But before we let you go, we do have our weekly assignment this week. And that would be to impeach our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. Donald Trump had his tweet over the weekend, which was horrific. But if you listen to Pete Hegseth, this is a guy who thinks it is really cool to just kill a bunch of people overseas. For him, war crimes seem to be the only thing that get him going, aside from maybe some of his other interests. But this is a guy who never should have been in this position. He was woefully unqualified. And he also is alleged to be personally profiting off of the war that he is conducting. If you saw that tremendous reporting from the Wall Street Journal about him alerting his broker, hey, maybe you should buy some stocks because I might start bombing stuff in Iran. Do me a solid. That's not what we need. And I know that you've seen us urge the impeachment of many people in Trump's cabinet and of Trump himself. But the reason why we do this is that it is so important to keep up the pressure on our elected leaders. And whether you're members of Congress or Democrats or Republicans, they need to hear from you. And we make it easy with this little QR code so that you can get in touch with your representatives, with your senators, because you don't want to let these people off the hook. And they'll say, well, we weren't hearing from people that we should impeach Trump or Hegseth or Pam Bondi. Oh, but you did. And we told you, just a few weeks ago, Pam Bondi has to go. Look, Trump is not immune to public pressure. Elected officials are not immune to public pressure. And so that's what we're here to do, is to keep that pressure on them. And it doesn't matter what party your elected representatives are from. If leaders are not meeting the basic standards that they should be to be members of Trump's cabinet, to be president of the United States, then it's up to us to hold them accountable.
And I think that look, that's why we started Lincoln Square. To actually, somebody told me, they were like, hey, how are you peeling off Republicans with your media? And I was like, well, that's not exactly the point. The point is to activate all of us who believe in pro-democracy, who want change and want to see change happen quickly and effectively. MAGA, we're not going to peel off so many MAGA, right? But what we need to do is all of us need to show up. And that means demanding impeachment, even if we know that it's not going to happen. Actually, we don't know that it's not going to happen because Bondi is Gandhi, right?
Right.
But
And Pete Hegseth maybe next.
well, I mean, inshallah.
Yeah. Well, that's before we go though, Sam, that is such a good point. I mean, I see our role here at Lincoln Square is obviously we are about pro-democracy journalism and building this community, but there are a lot of people that we know in our lives who say politics isn't for me. I don't know. Isn't everybody the same? Everybody seems corrupt in Washington. And it's about getting the best information out to people and letting people know that, you don't have to feel helpless. And there are things that we can all do together. And it's okay to have those doubts and those concerns. But, we know that Donald Trump counts on people being apathetic. He was expecting that we would all just roll over and say, fine, you get to do whatever you want. And look, with all of our No Kings protests, we've let them know absolutely not. And moreover, we don't want a king. We don't want what you're giving us. We don't like your high gas prices. We don't like your tariffs. We don't like your wars all over the globe that you promised you would never start. And by the way, why is everything costing so much? You promised us. You said day one. So, if you're not already a subscriber to Lincoln Square, go ahead. You can become a free subscriber. Check us out. See what we're doing. We'd really love to have you here and, be part of this community because I think we have a lot of really great voices here.
Yeah, that's right. And it's all about community. That's what it is. Your voice is a part of this whole thing.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. And Sam, great to have you back.
Yeah, good to be back. Recharged and ready. For,
At least
I don't know
bit.
what. Yeah. Thanks,
Great.
Susan.
Thank you.